This is Christina Barn. You guys are watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barn. Today, we're going to be talking about the Biden administration and just some more leaks and revelations that's been coming out. And one thing that people are flipping out right now is the lack of cabinet meetings that have been going on. We haven't had a full one since last October on the 2nd, which is pretty incredible to me. But Biden is very much coddled and protected and has short hours and is being shielded from a lot of people. I know a lot of folks knew about his condition, but people are claiming that, oh, well, people have been keeping him so close to the chest, that they didn't know how bad things were. And maybe some of that is true. But you have to question, why was he being so protected and sheltered from people? So anyway, we're going to be talking about some of this stuff today. And a lot of people are calling for Joe Biden to go, saying that at least that he can't win. And there's people within the campaign, anonymous people, of course, saying that they don't think he has any chance of winning, that it's zero. Nate Silver is reporting that Trump it was like 60 something percent. I think before the debate. Now it's up in the 70s. Polling in New York has Biden only winning by 8. It's just awful for him. So they want him to not run again. They want a different nominee. But I'm asking, should he still be president right now? Because if he's really having issues and they're dodging questions about doctors coming to the White House who are Parkinson's experts and stuff like that, which Kareem got caught in a lie about that. And should they invoke the 25th if he won't step down? If they really don't think that he's well enough to continue their campaign, which everyone thinks that, why should he be president for the remainder of the year? It's only July. It's like the beginning of the July. We're like not even like quite in the middle of July. So it's really bad. So before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys, go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website, because it does cost to stream and run my website, all stuff we got, so you guys can support. I do very much appreciate it. I encourage you guys to also check out different merch that I have, like this cool Not the Victim You're Looking For tee. And I got this Denounce White Supremacy, Defeat Joe Biden shirt, which I have a funny story to tell you guys. So yeah, it's got a list of some of this racist stuff on the back. There's a long sleeve version that you guys can get, that's pretty comfortable, but of course it's still hot outside, and at least it'll be hot for a while. You guys can get the short sleeve version. I also have different books that you guys can check out. I have 18 books, I think, that are all published. 2 are nonfiction and the rest are fiction. So an example of one of my fiction books, I have a historical fiction fantasy series that's like the American Civil War meets X-Men. So that's pretty interesting. You guys can check that out. One of my nonfiction books is Slay Your Fear, How to Overcome a Spirit of Fear. So that's a faith book. I wrote it because people lost their mind during COVID, and I just was like, this is too much, and you guys are letting your fear make you evil, basically. So I wrote that. It's just about COVID, but I definitely did mention it. I got children's books as well, children's chapter books. Super Kid, it's about a story of a boy with overactive imagination. He thinks he has superpowers. He doesn't really. It's based off some stories about my dad when he was a boy, and just kind of really, really reimagined. And then I have, of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion, which covers rights, science, theology, all sorts of goodies. So you guys can check that out If you're watching on Facebook, you guys can send stars. Watching on YouTube, you guys can send super chats, as long as your super chats aren't gross or something. I usually will read them. So hope you guys are all doing well. I see someone's from Salt Lake City in the comments. So welcome. Thank you guys for watching live, and thank you to those of you who watch it back later. So I want to start off talking about this CNN article that's causing a stir right now. I posted a piece of it on social media. Angry and stunned Democrats blame Biden's closest advisors for shielding public from full extent of president's decline. At a star-studded fundraiser for President Joe Biden in Los Angeles last month, George Clooney wasn't the only one who came away concerned about the president. And George Clooney did write an op-ed. We talked about that yesterday. And other people who were there at the event said that they saw the same Joe Biden they saw there that night is the same one that we saw on the debate stage. So everyone who was like, oh, but Obama's not helping lead him away, that's a cheap fake, that's fake news. Everyone there knew the truth, that Biden did not look good. Even before Biden made remarks that night, whispers of concern rippled through the audience at the Peacock Theater about the president, who had just arrived from a long flight from Italy. Some of the biggest donors at the $30 million fundraising event, who had waited in line to take pictures with Biden, expressed unease at how the president looked and carried himself. He was less cognate than usual, said one of the attendees, who was surprised that during a smaller meeting with the donors before the main event, Biden barely spoke. Instead, the person said he left virtually all the talking to former President Barack Obama, which struck some guests as unusual. Biden's appearance in California struck attendees as starkly different from the fundraising gala he attended in March at Radio City Music Hall in New York. That was a big event. They had a bunch of celebrities there. One Democrat guest told CNN when Biden appeared on stage with Obama and former President Bill Clinton, there was a marked difference in the president from the spring and the summer. The senior Democrat told CNN he's not just the same. Back in Washington, there have been clear signs throughout his term of Biden being increasingly stage managed, with lists of talking points, names of questionnaires, and drawings of where he should walk presented to him by aides ahead of closed-door cabinet meetings that Biden attends. It is customary for cabinet officials to submit questions and key talking points that they plan to present in front of Biden ahead of time to White House aides, two sources with direct knowledge told CNN. The entire display is kind of an act, one of those sources told CNN. They would come and say, hey, the president is going to call on you about 20 minutes in and ask this question. What are the bullet points to respond with? The second source, who echoed that some description, said when Biden attends the cabinet meetings, they are not freewheeling and pretty well orchestrated, and the meetings themselves are infrequent, with one cabinet secretary telling CNN they are uncertain of Biden's condition because they so rarely see him. In fact, the last full cabinet meeting took place on October 2nd, 2023. Sources also said cabinet meetings during the Obama years, which Biden attended as vice president, were not pre-scripted this way. So there's a lot of folks freaking out and like, we haven't had a full cabinet meeting in all this time. Like, we're not quite a year, but October the 2nd. So that was prior to the attack on Israel. Just a lot of stuff has happened in the world since then. And it's just a long time without a full meeting. Now, but Bharat Ramamurthy, former deputy director, National Economic Council, and member Congressional Oversight Commissioner, said that he thought everyone's reporting on this was unhinged because he said full cabinet meetings are notoriously not true work meetings. They are largely for show. Real work and decision making happens in smaller meetings with only the relevant officials. That's been true for every administration in my memory. And folks are pointing out, but the scripted portions of how it's organized isn't like how it was with the Obama administration when Joe Biden was actually a part of it. So it's unusual. But we know a lot of things about the Biden administration is unusual. Are we really surprised about his mental, capabilities when you would see him holding the cards with people's names on it, like the reporters and their questions and their names, and like it's all very, very, very scripted. It's all very scripted. So to downplay this as if this is so just usual and people are blowing it out of proportion, it's not usual. I saw a report the other day that Biden had like 14 like press conferences, and um Trump, I don't know if they're comparing him to every president through their at that point of time where they were in history, because they had Obama and they had Bush on there, and Obama and Bush had more than Trump and Biden, but they all had 2 terms, and Trump and Biden both would just have one now. But Trump had 44. So that's a big difference. Like I felt like Trump talked to the press a lot. He wasn't afraid to brawl with them and talk to them and answer their questions, even though, they would take things that he said and, ran with it, and would whether it was a joke or not, or some kind of flippant thing he said, and then it would be large stories, or they'd blow something out of proportion or try to make a big moral deal out of stuff, like when he called MS-13 gang members animals. They're like, oh my gosh, he's calling the migrants animals, how dare he? And then when it was like clear, like, okay, here's the context of it, I'm clearly talking about MS-13 people, and they're like, but they're still humans, how dare you call people who cut out hearts of their victims animals? Just really stupid stuff. But Trump wasn't afraid to talk to these folks and deal with these folks. And his press secretary, Kayleigh, was, Sarah Huckabee Sanders was pretty good, but Kayleigh was just fabulous at the job. And Biden's weren't good at all. Like Jen Psaki was better than what he got right now. For sure. For sure. But some people could say this reporting from CNN, well, it's just people, anonymous sources, they don't, there's a lot of people who want him out. Yeah, there's a lot of people who want him out, but that doesn't mean what they're saying isn't true. And again, we've been observing things with our eyes, and we know that the people who are really close to him now and in his ear are his son, Hunter, and his wife, Jill, which, by the way, when people were talking about Hunter Biden's laptop and their business dealings and the sort of things that Hunter had on his laptop, or the things that he was engaged in, people would say, oh gosh, good thing I'm not voting for Hunter. And fair, you didn't vote for Hunter, but Hunter still shows up at these events when he's like on trial, and he's in the same place as like the attorney general, and the rest of the DOJ. It's just, kind of odd, and then spending time at the White House, and, Biden still says he's the best guy that he knows. And, and now he's like in serious meetings that he shouldn't be in or belong to. And just that relationship of father and son is a lot closer than people try to make it seem when we were all talking about his laptop. Now, the laptop was interesting because it held information that connected Joe and Hunter and raised a lot of questions about their business dealings together, and text messages, I giving money to Pop, or, 10% for the big guy. And, the WhatsApp message that Hunter Biden was threatening a Chinese businessman, and he claimed that his dad was right next to him. There's a lot of things that incriminate them together, which I'm sure is one reason why Biden doesn't want to step down. There's a lot riding on, him being president. Who's going to pardon his son if he's he says he won't do it, but I if he goes, but there's just a lot of shady stuff with his family, but he is a stubborn old man, and his wife does like the attention. She likes the power. She's about riding in the motorcades. She likes when the band plays her special music that she had them make, called like Fanfare for the First Lady. It made that story made me think of Just like, man, if this was a church or something and Jill Biden was the first lady of the church, that's what they call. I guess that's not the same in every church, but a lot of churches they call the pastor's wife the first lady, and that would just she'd probably like split the church, just like derail and do so many terrible things because she's a seems to be a bit of a control freak here, but they don't want him to leave. He doesn't want to leave, and he keeps telling them he's not going to leave. Fair enough, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't force him out. As far as what they can do at convention, their options are very low because he has so many delegates, like all the delegates pledged to him, and they have to vote for him on the first round. So by the time the first round is over, is he not the nominee? So they don't have a lot of options. There's delegates who are trying to change the rules or or whatever. That people are calling to have like an open floor convention and to challenge Biden. But rules are rules. They're the ones who didn't want debate. They're the ones who didn't want it to be a primary. They didn't want him to be contested. They just wouldn't allow that to happen. You have a RFK Jr. who did not want to run as an independent. He wanted to run against Biden, but they wouldn't allow it, so he decided to run as an independent. It's very funny also that in the midst of these conversations, no one's like, you know what, let's all just go vote for the actual Democrat on another ticket. It might not be the Democrat Party, but maybe we can beat Trump if we all just pull together and vote independent, maybe, and vote for the other Democrat if there's nothing we can do about Joe. They don't want to go that route, certainly. So, if they think that Joe Biden is so out of whack and not just can't win, they don't think he can do the job, like he's going to last another 4 years. They don't think he's going to last. So George Stephanopoulos, he did an interview with Biden that aired on Friday, which it was supposed to originally be on Sunday, but I'm sure they put it on Friday because when it comes out on the weekend like that on Friday, people want to do weekend stuff, so it doesn't quite it gets a little lost in the noise when it's something that happens Sunday. It's like fresh on our minds on Monday, so I'm sure that's why they moved it. But George was asked on the street like what he thought about like Joe Biden, and he said he didn't think that he could last another 4 years, and he got in trouble. And his job told him, you need to clarify this. So he did, and he said, it doesn't reflect the network's views, but he just said what is very apparent, that he can't last another 4 years. So if you vote for Joe Biden, you are voting for Kamala to be president at some point of time. But the problem is that he can't do the job now. So his handlers, I'm not saying Joe Biden's not making any decisions, but his handlers are maybe Jill's making a lot of decisions, who knows? Or Hunter's making a lot of decisions. I would imagine they have a lot of influence because he has a small circle of who he can trust. So as far as like who's actually acting as president and making the decisions, the way that he's being handled is not normal. You don't have a real executive heading the executive branch. He is being handled by people around him. And unfortunately, he's had very radical people around him. People expected that Joe Biden was going to be the one who's going to return everything back to normalcy, which was always crazy. People just don't know Joe Biden well enough. But he had all these really, really radical people that surrounded him, and they have their hooks in him, and they get to, I guess, basically run the asylum because he's, he just can't do his job except for a certain amount of hours between like 10 and 4. They say he's great, and then afterwards so they trying to schedule things early and schedule things on after 8 o'clock and make sure that he gets to bed and gets enough sleep, but he needs his nap in the middle of the day. It's just not great. Like Joe Biden and his folks decided to, I guess, push back with this George Clooney article, and so now they're kind of coming at George Clooney and saying, well, hey, Joe Biden, he stayed and took photos, selfies, and George Clooney left. So I guess he has more stamina than George Clooney.
response to those comments from George Clooney, Jake? A campaign official who attended that Los Angeles fundraiser tells me that George Clooney left 3 hours before the president. So clearly the gloves are off. Jake?
But what does that mean that George Clooney left 3 hours? What's the point?
The point of that is to suggest that Biden's stamina is better than Clooney's, and Clooney didn't have, eyes on the entire event. That's the response to the Clooney op-ed.
Okay.
In response to-
I love Jake's response. Okay. Like, it's if you're attacking George Clooney, you're losing. Especially since George is a he's like creme de la creme of like Hollywood elite, I suppose. So they're really messing up here, man. And here's some more about kind of the article that I just went over a little bit with how they structure everything.
According to two sources, before cabinet meetings that the president attends, cabinet officials will submit their questions and key talking points and bullet points that they plan to present to the president in these closed door meetings. This is how one source described it. They said the entire display is kind of an act. They would come and say, hey, the president is going to call on you about 25 minutes in and ask this question. What are the bullet points that you'll respond with? Now, the White House's defense has been that is standard practice for any administration. They said in a setting like this, you never want the president to be not aware of what is going to be discussed. They want to also just be mindful of the president's time. But we also spoke with sources from the Obama years who said in the cabinet meetings for former President Barack Obama, those were never this meticulously scripted. According to two sources.
Not meticulously scripted. Obviously. Speaking of George Clooney, Trump posted this on Truth Social. It's pretty funny.
So although I wish I were here with better news, the fact is that you and I are sitting here today because this will be your last week of employment. This is not an assessment of your productivity. You got to try not to take this personally.
Well, I just had a bad night.
He just had a bad night. That's what he said in the Stephanopoulos interview. He's gonna have one with Lester Holt, by the way, which will not be live. So the attempts that they're doing, putting him out in front of people, doing different events, it's not doing enough to alleviate the fears a lot of people are having, which, by the way, there's been a lot of chatter still of Democrats saying they want him to go, some not having the courage to just say it. Some people are still like, oh, it's up to him, but he already made a decision. There are some Democrats who are flat out saying it shouldn't be him. And one of the Democrats was actually a congresswoman from Michigan, which Michigan doesn't look good, and it's a swing state for the Democrats, and it was looking like they'll lose it. So it was Hillary Slotkin, and there's a Schulten. She's from the West Side. She took Peter Meyer's seat after Peter Myers lost his primary. Actually, the Democrats paid for ads that uplifted Trump's pick, John Gibbs. And so they'd run ads like, John Gibbs, he loves school choice and the Constitution. And so they were ads, but they weren't really negative ads. They were ads that would be good to like pro-Trump people. And they're like, oh yeah, John Gibbs, let me vote for him. And Peter Myers voted for impeachment, so he was, not a favorite for a lot of folks. So John Gibbs ended up winning the primary over Peter Meyer. As in like Myers, the grocery stores. I don't know if Myers are everywhere, but or if they're not just a Michigan chain, are they? But it's a big grocery store. And so anyway, John Gibbs won, but he lost the general election to Hillary, and so she came out against Joe Biden, saying that he should step aside. And so there's some incredible commentary Chuck Todd's done in his podcast that he was talking to someone who wants to run for president, who wanted to run for president and still does want to run for president. And I don't know who exactly he was talking about. I mean, obvious choices that he could have been talking about was like Gretchen Whitmer or Gavin Newsom. But he said that Joe Biden made remarks in the past as if he was only going to be one term. And that's true. I've talked to you guys about that before. He made it seem like he was going to be like a transition sort of guy. And he was a person that they needed in order to beat Trump. And, you know, it seemed like he would only do one term. And so here he is again. And I guess when he said that comment, that person who wanted to be president was waiting on stage. I mean, was on stage with Biden when he said that. So Chuck Todd, he said that before he said this part that's in this clip that I have.
And it has made me want to rethink a lot of the Biden biography. I still can't believe he ran for president in the first place, given that his family was in crisis in 2018. That you look at what has happened. I can't believe he put his family through this. And now looking at his behavior now in clinging to this, I think the entire narrative on Joe Biden is going to change, in that he's always been, everything has been about his ambition, and his ambition comes first.
I thought Joe Biden was just like a sweet old grandpa. And now because he won't step aside, they're like, oh my gosh, was he ambitious the whole time? Yes. Joe Biden is like many politicians who will say anything, do anything to get elected, to obtain power and wealth. And not all politicians are like that. But Joe Biden has been in the game a very long time, has been enriched by this process for a very long time. And I can understand like some things about him. Like people are like, oh, he's a good guy. Like Meghan McCain was very grateful to how he treated her family when she lost her dad. And but there's another side of Joe, like she just was floored how he acted after Afghanistan, and she's like, this isn't the same kind of guy that I know. But he's the guy who participated in the high-tech lynching of Clarence Thomas. He's the guy who will sell you out to, you know, the banks and credit card companies and all sorts of stuff. And, you know, we'll say, hey, we're doing the 1994 crime bill, and then walk it back. And when stuff is politically convenient, you know, he'll do the Afghanistan exit, knowing that he really won't be held accountable for all this stuff. There were so many opportunities to hold Joe Biden accountable that the media could have really went in on him about, which they were upset about Afghanistan, but not like how they should have been. Not like how they should have been. Like they were upset and it was hot a little bit, but how they're reacting now is much different than how they've treated him his entire presidency. And if they had treated him equally, because he lies all the time, he does dumb things all the time. The radical people in his administration push crazy things. If they had just treated Biden a little bit like how they treated Trump, Biden probably would have been like, you know what, I don't know if I can run again. Like maybe he would have made that decision, or if they just hadn't covered for him the way that they did. But Chuck Todd waking up, who's on, you know, MSNBC, like, oh, this is making me rethink Biden. Yeah, we all knew that he was a bit of a scumbag. Well, welcome to reality. Welcome to reality, bruh. There is a clip that it's kind of long. It's a panel. It's about 10 minutes long on CNN. And they're debating Joe Biden, and Ana Navarro is on there, and Jamal Simmons. And Jamal Simmons, he's a CNN, you know, commentator, comms guy, and he's says some pretty wild things in an interview. Not as wild as Anna. So I thought it was worth watching it with you guys. We got time. So here we go.
Joining me now to discuss everything we just heard, Scott Jennings, Jamal Simmons, Anna Navarro, and Coleman Hughes. A cognitive test. She says it's a good idea, Anna.
Look, Joe Biden needs a way to shut down all of this noise that's going on, right? I think he thought that if he kept doing events, that would shut it down. I think he thought that if he sent that letter that he did to Congress earlier in the week, that would shut it down. It hasn't shut it down. There's got to be a way to shut this down because this is unsustainable. We cannot continue in this breathless reporting about Joe Biden's every word and splicing everything he says and does. So I think
she said splicing as if we're still going with the cheap fakes and all that stuff. You could just play Biden word for word, like how he mumbles and stumbles and forgets stuff, and he'll be on a rant, and then he'll kind of get mentally tired and go, anyway. Like no one needs to slice anything, ma'am.
Both candidates should take
Well,
a
yeah,
cognitive exam.
and that was the question as well. I mean, it would probably be a smart.
I think it should be a law. I think we need tax returns for anybody running for 10 years for anybody running for president. And I think we should know that they're not like incapable, mentally incapable and insane. It would be a good idea to make it a law. I'm all for it, for both.
And to Anna's point,
it is crazy to me that people are still I mean, the tax returns thing, I'm sure, is a knock at Trump and how he didn't really want to turn in his tax returns or show all of his tax returns. But it's wild to me that these people still like harp on that, but they just lack curiosity about text messages that Hunter Biden sends to his daughter about his business, dealings with his dad. And they just there's no evidence of any of that kind of stuff. So spare me. Because there's obviously a way that they're shielding some stuff around, or moving stuff around, But we do know that from their own private conversations that there's shady stuff. But does Anna care about that stuff? No. Blind, just willfully blind to it.
Joe Biden has not shut this down. I mean, the governor suggested that he said he's going to stay in the race, but this just keeps coming back.
No, it's been an issue in my view for at least 18 months, really. If you look at him on camera, and after the debate, everyone saw what they saw. Now we were all watching it at once, and that's why the dam broke with the debate. So I think absolutely, if he wants to make a statement, he should absolutely do a cognitive test with multiple witnesses from both parties in the room. The longer he doesn't do it, the more he is saying to people, I'm afraid to do it because I'm afraid of the results.
Okay, I'm not advocating a cognitive test with multiple witnesses.
Well,
that's not like a virginity test, okay? And the medieval ages.
He doesn't need it. He doesn't. I mean, his issue is not a one-off cognitive test. His issue is that he's super old. He is an obvious decline from when he ran in 2020 and from when he served as vice president. And no test is going to reverse what we've seen. The reason he's having so much trouble with all this is because he spent his entire career getting used to his own largely fabricated personal narrative being successfully covered up. This is disorienting for him. This is the first time in his life that his personal narrative is not being covered up, either by Democrats or by media looking the other way. This is the first time we've seen on full display the truth of Joe Biden. They have covered this up for so long, and it's a scandal.
Scott, when you talk about covering up personal narrative, are you talking about the loss of his wife and daughter? Are you talking about the loss of his son to cancer? Are you
saying Joe Biden has never made up a story about his personal
but I'm saying his personal narrative is a narrative about a man who has been steeped in pain and steeped in things that most of us would struggle to get through, who kept battling away at it, kept showing up for people, kept fighting for the middle class, who grew up in small town Scranton. That's his personal narrative. That's what it is that attracts people to Joe Biden. It's been a thing that sort of held him up the entire time in his political career. And I think it's kind of not right for anybody to say.
You think it's not? You think
covering that up?
You think
that's so honestly true about his life.
First of all,
okay. So he said the media, they spent all this time covering up the narrative, and then he's like, "What are you talking about? His wife died, his son died," and just go. What does all this have to do with them concealing things? You're just proving the point. You shift, and that's what Biden does. Something's going on. He brings up Beau, and then he'll say wrong things about Beau, about how he died, when he got sick. Like the stories that he tells about his death, there's not evidence to prove that all that is connected, but he keeps saying it. Okay, but he says it all the time. Like, the people who are mad, the Gold Star families in Afghanistan were upset because he wanted to talk about his son after he screwed up and got their kids killed. So I don't, it's gross to say, it's gross to point out. I guess it's gross that he does it, but he uses his son. But you want to talk about his wife and his son, all this tragedy, as if we don't know that they would hang stockings at the White House for his grandchildren. But every year, one stocking would be missing because his son knocked up a stripper, and they didn't want to acknowledge the little girl who his son was refusing to pay child support for, and they had to take him to the courts. So regardless of how messed up Hunter is, in the sort of way he turned out, in the way that Joe Biden raised him, why would you decide to do this whole stunt with the stockings? And they did it a few years. They didn't do it last year because this became a story, and it got finally got some heat and pushback, and people are like, people find this cruel. So they just didn't hang stockings. So that's another thing that we know. People can sympathize with having a family member that has battled addiction, but that doesn't mean that you coddle them by letting them use your name to get a bunch of money and just enrich themselves and enrich the rest of your family. You can go around threatening people, helping shady companies obtain cash, and making all these deals. It's, like mining for a certain kind of mineral that they use for, was it cobalt, maybe, for these electric vehicles and stuff, doing all kinds of deals to enrich yourself. That's the story of Joe Biden. Not that this other stuff that he's saying isn't true, but it's more than the I've had loss, which a lot of people can relate to because they've suffered too. But that doesn't excuse all the terrible things that he's done. That doesn't make up for the fact that he's not a good president. And it doesn't make up for the fact that he has not been well, and the people around him have been lying about it. Another narrative of Joe Biden is he's a liar. He lies about himself constantly. Was it his uncle that he claimed got eaten by cannibals? He's lied about being endorsed by the NAACP. He's lied about was it teaching or attending a HBCU? He lied about finishing like top of his class. He's like near the bottom. He lied about participating in the civil rights movement several times and still does it. Any opportunity he can get, he lies about participating in the civil rights movement. He's plagiarized work. There's a myth of Joe Biden of who he is. And you can't just tell this like story about like, oh, just the sad guy. Life has been so tragic, but he loves his sunglasses and his ice cream, so he'll get through it. It's just so silly.
Well, he has told lie after lie after lie about his life.
Did I say anything right now that was a lie?
But the biggest lie.
Did I just say anything that was a lie?
Do you want to go through and rehash all the stories he has talked?
No, but I just
wait.
I mean, but here's the deal. But here's the deal.
Let me just say this. You support Donald Trump. This is a guy who began.
I haven't announced who I work here.
You're obviously not supporting Donald. You're not obviously not
money
supporting
to Joe Biden. I don't give money to anybody.
I will happily give all my money to Joe Biden because if the other choice is Donald Trump, that's a binary choice. But okay, the other choice is a guy who began lying about how to dodge the draft because of made up bone spurs. He doesn't even remember which foot he had those.
So what level of
supposed-
lying is acceptable? This is what I don't get about this Biden versus Trump lying debate.
Where is the
Apparently,
lie?
apparently, if you tell one less lie than Donald Trump, that's good enough. Is that the bar you want to set? This is a scandal. What has been covered up about Biden for the last 3.5 years or more by his staff, by Democrats? Look at this George Clooney op-ed. Well, 3 weeks ago, we all saw it. Well, why didn't anybody say anything that night? It's not that they care about the office of the president. It's that they care they're losing. That's why it's coming to
I
light.
think you got it all wrong. When I think listen, this is not an administration that has lied. It just happened. Okay.
Not
You
one
can
lie.
laugh, you can
Not
stop.
one lie.
I know, but you supported an administration.
So she's going into you supported an administration, blah blah blah, going into like Trump hate. To say that this administration hasn't lied is a crazy lie, a crazy lie. Like you go back to Afghanistan and them claiming that the strike was true when they killed that aid worker and those kids, and said, "Oh, there was a secondary explosion," when the truth is there was no explosion because they killed a guy who was carrying water canisters back to like his home for the people. And nobody got in trouble for it. No sort of repercussions there. Joe Biden at the debate stage claimed that no troops died under his watch, which of course obviously isn't true because we go back to Afghanistan, but other troops have died beyond that too. Which is crazy because I'm like, don't you guys make phone calls to the families and talk to, like, we know you were at the ceremony because you were checking your watch. So that was a pretty big lie. So for her to say the administration hasn't lied is insane. It's really insane. And I don't understand how Trump breaks people's brains like this. You cannot like I always say this, like people who like Trump could name more legitimate reasons to not like Trump than people who actually hate him. Like I could name real things to not like. Anna will just vomit, one thing after another. And I can understand, she'll say like January 6th and election denial, etc., blah, blah, blah. But Democrats deny election results when they don't like stuff either. Some of the very same ones that were part of the impeachment process, as a matter of fact. But let's keep listening to her delusions.
That lied about the size of the crowd at the inauguration.
Do you honestly expect us to believe that they've never lied?
But I didn't remember which lie she was going to say. But if you're going to talk about how Joe Biden said no lies and Trump lies all the time, would your first lie about that Trump says all the time, because he's such an awful human being, would your first lie that you would go to be they lied about their crowd sizes? That seems like a pretty minuscule thing. Now, I don't approve of lying. I'm not a fan. I would, excuse or advocate for it. But that's the first thing that pops in your head. They lied about crowd sizes, but Joe Biden's always been honest. It's a joke.
Confusing administrations. And I think part of the reason that this hasn't been shut down, frankly, is because there's been breathless and somewhat reckless reporting by media.
The journalists? You're saying the journalists are wrong?
Yes, I do. I think that when okay, let me give you examples. I think that when journalists jump on the George Stephanopoulos interview and talk about how Mark Warner didn't run, I think they're wrong. Mark Warner ran. He ran for 5 hot minutes, but he got close enough to run.
Sorry, we
where
have to
Joe
defend,
Biden is saying that is not a lie.
We have to defend the journalists. I'm sorry. We have journalists at CNN, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times.
I think that
journalists.
I think that when journalists jump to conclusions about a Parkinson's specialist that has been part of the White House medical unit
that they've
for
lied
over
about.
a decade.
They lied about it.
What part did they lie about?
Let's just take a pause.
What part did they lie
about the George Clooney?
The guy went. No, wait, hold on, Abby.
Karine has repeatedly lied about this.
No, she has
and about
not.
whether Biden was in the meeting. She lied about it.
No, they have not.
Yes,
This is
yes, she
a
did.
White House medical unit doctor who has been part of this since Obama. During the Obama administration, he visited the White House over 20 times. Did Obama have Parkinson's? They have said.
I think you need to catch up on the news tonight. That's all.
No, I think you need to go read the truth. And you see, this narrative is.
So what he's talking about, we talked about how there was a big fuss. The reporters just went ape on Kareem because there was this doctor who's a Parkinson's expert who was in the White House quite a bit. And so she's like, he doesn't have Parkinson's but there was a report that there was a meeting with I think Biden's doctor, his usual doctor, someone else. And then the fourth person, they didn't know. At first she was like, I'm not confirming anything because of security reasons. And I can't do that. And they're just like, the logs are public. The logs are public. And there was another name like in a meeting that people didn't know, but there's only so many people could be because their name isn't in the log. And so they did ask her if Biden was in the meeting with them, and she said no. And then they had to end up admitting that Biden was in the meeting with them. So that was the lie, but they were trying to say, well, oh, he's a specialist. He's been there for, specialist for just a long time, working and talking about the troops and other stuff. So they tried to kind of pin it on the military and service there, when the truth is that he talked to Biden and all of them together and stuff. So whether they were like diagnosing him with Parkinson's or that night or whatever when they were in the meeting, regardless, the White House not being honest about this stuff is pretty insane. And that was a scandal that was going on last night, but there's like a new scandal every day. And Anna, I had retweeted this clip, this full video, and I was just like, after watching this, I think, Anna needs like a cognitive test because she's on a mental decline or something like that, because the way that she's just trying to just lie for Biden is crazy. As far as like what she said about the Stephanopoulos interview and the media jumping on Warner saying that Biden saying that he ran, and people like said that he didn't run. He launched an exploratory committee, which a lot of people do that, but that's not like an official I'm running. It's just kind of like I'm exploring the idea of it kind of thing. So that's kind of open to an interpretation. There's more things that were red flags in that interview. And I guess George Stephanopoulos really was triggered by, or disturbed by it, since he was asked about it, and he said that he didn't think Biden could last another 4 years. So let's see what else Anna says.
It's part of the reason why all of these questions have not been shut down. And I do think there's been reckless reporting.
I hear what you're saying, but there's no question that it's not a media narrative. 50 million people.
You don't think the media has, you don't think there's been reckless reporting by some media?
50 million people watched the president on that debate stage. And on the George Clooney of it all, George Clooney was at this fundraiser, right? And the fundraiser they raised $28 million. He comes out of it and he thinks that something is wrong. And he goes to write this op-ed. And according to the New York Times tonight, the White House tries to stop him. They send Jeffrey Katzenberg to try to get him to not publish this op-ed. Another person who was at that fundraiser now comes forward and says the president did not look great that night. So it's not a media narrative. It's also coming from people who love and respect Joe Biden. They are just deeply concerned.
That is true. When I did campaigns, we sort of had a saying, you talk to the candidate, but you trust the research, right? And right now, the research is starting to show that the president has had some trouble showing up at events. So now what we have to know is this something that happens? How often does this happen? Does this happen a few times, or does it happen a lot of times? This is the challenge of the Biden candidacy right now. I think Joe Biden should keep running for president. But the challenge is he's going to have to fight back on this every single day going forward. And I think that's one of the things when you talk to Democrats, they're worried. Are we trading a problem today for a bigger problem that we might have tomorrow? And that's something that is I am hearing a lot of. And I think as those of us who are thinking through this, who support Joe Biden, we need to see what he's going to be able to do in terms of running this campaign, talking to people, doing the long-form interviews, doing the big town hall meetings. Those are the things that would give people who are his allies more confidence that he can actually
Do you
continue.
think he's going to get better? Do you think he is likely to perform better over the next 6 months than he has over the last 3 weeks?
He has performed better in every event since the debate than he did at that
That's
debate.
cap.
So
Well,
he's
but
done,
interview-
and by the way, he's done about
What we
20
know
some
about-
events
say,
since the
what we
debate
know
while
about-
Donald Trump has been in Florida golfing.
Yeah.
We know-
Tomorrow is going to be a
strategically
big
correctly
day,
acting.
Coleman. It's
Speaking-
going to be a big day. He's got a big press conference scheduled.
Speaking of golfing, you know, they went back and forth a little bit on the debate stage about golfing. And I think Biden said something about he would take him. So Trump did like issue a challenge. And then the Biden group was just kind of like, we don't have time for that. Like, that's silly. But if you guys are making the challenges about the golf, like that would be a wild way to decide the presidency. But I'm sure Biden couldn't take Trump in golf. That was a silly sort of back and forth. And it was unnecessary because they asked Trump about like his, you know, cognitive abilities and stuff. He's like, oh, I golf all the time. You got to be smart to do it, and, you know, a bit physically fit. And I think I lost some weight, and, you know, and Biden's just like, huh, and decided to go down that road. But he could have just, you know, let him have that answer and move on with their life.
scheduled. It's the tail end of NATO. This is going to be a moment that, according to all the reporting, everybody's looking at. His allies, the people who are staying quiet behind the scenes, who some of them, according to the reporting, are waiting to see a misstep to try to convince Biden that he should get out of this race.
Yeah. Look, just think about what we know about age-related decline in general. Nothing of what I'm about to say is controversial. You get to a certain age, you could have had a great life, great career. You start to have good days and bad days. And then secondly, the decline drops off exponentially. It starts slow and then it gets quicker and quicker and quicker. And that's a huge problem because Biden would need to be president for 4 more years.
Yes.
Right? And you can't have good days and bad days if you're the president
Okay,
of the
well,
United States.
it's the same damn problem for Donald Trump, because if you don't think
No.
he says some incredibly crazy things that make absolutely no sense, you haven't seen one of his rallies when he's talking about sharks and batteries and windmills and all sorts of things that you would, if it was your father, you would send him
No.
for a cognitive.
No, I've heard Trump explain the sharks and battery things, and he laughs at the media trying to make it seem like he's crazy talking about the sharks and batteries thing, because they were talking about powering ships with like electric batteries, and they're like, well, basically they're kind of too heavy to operate. And so he would ask like the experts, okay, what would happen if it starts sinking? Like, are we all going to get electrocuted? And he's like, and what happens if there's a shark? Like, would you rather get electrocuted or would you face the shark? So, you know, he's just kind of throwing out like scenarios like this. Right now, this seems kind of silly with the battery situation. So, and it was just kind of funny. So when he tells it at the rallies, they're kind of funny stories. So to compare that to Joe Biden in his performance and his ramblings and so on to Trump, it's just silly. I don't understand how you can't understand the shark stories and whatnot.
All
The
right,
problem
guys,
is Trump's spies
we
are
got to leave it there. Everybody, thank you very much.
Yeah. So Anna was supposed to be a Republican and just got her brain broken. And I don't understand how people can allow their faculties to just shut down because of this dude. And to be fair, on the other opposite end, like with people who just adore Trump to a fault, I don't understand that either. I understand people who grift, though. I mean, who will basically throw opinions out of the window, you know, to adhere to what he says. I get it. Like, I find it disappointing, though, but I guess I get it. At least there's some kind of value in that. These people who, like Anna, and I guess maybe being the Republican who stands up to Trump, you get this newfound respect from the left, and then those are your followers. And if you ever watch This Is Savvy, she's on YouTube, but she's really big on TikTok. She's over 1 million followers. She used to say, actually, I've only heard her say this once, but she mentioned it because there's some like drama going on, like book talk or whatever. But she said, however you get your followers is how you have to keep them. So you have to be careful for how you amass them, you know? So these people like Bill Kristol or the Lincoln Project or Anna here, they rise to fame, getting a lot of people who are like, oh, these Republicans, they're ripping on Trump. So now when there's just a reasonable sort of decision or reasonable, they can't be reasonable because they have to play team politics. So being like, I don't care, it's a binary choice, you have to pick Trump or Biden. There's a lot of discussions going on as if they can push out Biden right now as far as being the nominee. And Dave Axelrod was on CNN the other day talking about Joe Biden's decline. That's an Obama guy. People are saying that George Clooney would not have written this op-ed if he did not have the go-ahead from Obama, which there are reports that they did speak. Allegedly, he didn't tell him to do it, but he didn't tell him to not do it. He maybe told him to do it. I don't know. What actually happened behind the scenes. Ben Rhodes, Obama guy, I've seen him tweet stuff about all this stuff, but they're not in the Biden can win camp. So Obama and his acolytes seem to want to derail Joe here. But if he can't run his campaign, how can he be the president? And I think in all seriousness, he shouldn't be the president today. And I don't want Kamala Harris to be president. And I think that, and there's talk that his people are doing secret polling right now to see how she'll do. And I don't know if they can really know how she will do until she is at the front of it all. Like, will that change people's optimism when there's like a fresh face versus Trump? Will that rejuvenate the party? Like some of the people who don't want to support them because of, I don't know, they're not progressive enough with the Israel stuff or whatnot. Like, will they do the moderates see her as too progressive? I don't know how that will all come down if the binary choice is her versus Trump. So we'll see. But I definitely don't want Kamala Harris to be president. She was my least favorite person on the Democrat debate stage. So I hate that she's there in the White House. I would hate if she was number 47. And I do think that I think she's being underestimated, but we'll see. We'll see. But there's too much pressure on Joe. And I'm not saying that, and everybody thinks he's going to lose, and the Democrats don't want to lose. Now, there's some who are probably fine with another Trump term. He makes folks a lot of money, both sides, media, ratings, people, doing the we hate Trump nonstop. So people have a lot to benefit from. And then Trump's already moderated on so many things. They took out a lot of pro-gun stuff on the Republican platform, stuff that would, affirm, traditional marriage, took out stuff. Well, they made the platform into a pro-choice platform. So he's already mutated the Republican Party in a more moderate position. And there's like conservatives who were very pro-life or whatever, who are changing their stances or softening them in an uncomfortable way. So I think we've really lost a piece of our soul. But there's a lot of folks who feel more comfortable with them, and I don't understand why the Democrats haven't moderated in some of their positions. If I was Kamala Harris and they made me president tomorrow, I would immediately reinstitute Remain in Mexico, do some stuff on the border to let people know that we're going to do something, to put people's minds at ease. The way that they've handled all this stuff has just been bizarre. But I want to thank RC for the super chats. Joe is not leaving. They are stuck with him. I think very much that he doesn't obviously plan to go. His family doesn't want him to go. They're going to keep him there as long as they can. But the pressure is immense, and people are reading into the fact that Obama doesn't want him there either. And they're doing reports about how they're not having a cabinet meeting and how he's so handled. He has a press conference tonight. If he doesn't do well, it's going to go very badly for him. And that still doesn't mean that he will surrender his delegates, release them, and allow them to vote for someone else. He could just allow everyone to go down in flames in November and be like, well, I tried. Maybe he's more comfortable with Trump beating him than him resigning. But the best kind of thing to do for his legacy would be for him to resign. But when you get that old, folks are really stubborn. And I don't mean to be like an ageist like that, but I've lived life. I've seen people. It's just kind of true. It's just kind of true. So he's a stubborn old man. He doesn't want to leave. That doesn't mean people won't make him. So if the leaks continue to get really bad and he can't handle the world, he can't handle his big boy press conference, as they keep calling it, they could push him out entirely. Because again, I don't think it makes sense to say that he can't run his campaign, but he can run the country for the next several months. So that's not, the math isn't math in there. But before I let you guys go, there was something else that was pretty interesting. And again, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. So Biden, he did an interview after the debate, and it turned out that the station said that edits were recommended to them. So the station said it would make the full unedited available online, but 2 edits according to the station were at time 5:20, the removal of, and in addition to that, I have more blacks in my administration than any other president, all other presidents combined, and in major positions, cabinet positions. So all these people who were mad at Trump for saying black jobs, even though during the debate, the moderators were the ones who brought up the economy for minorities and introduced conversation about Black Americans, and Joe Biden said stuff about Black Americans. People were upset, like, what are black jobs? Which some people were honest about explaining it, like Dr. Umar went on the Breakfast Club and broke it down. But I've seen other TikToks like, what's black Twitter? What's black TikTok? What are black colleges? What are black schools and black churches? Like, you all know, it just means we're talking about predominantly black. Oh, sorry about that, guys. I just had a kind of a power outage that just happened. So that's why I got kicked out real quick. My internet, I'm on my battery, and I plugged up to my phone Wi-Fi. So anyway, that's pretty much the show. I'm gonna have to let you go, guys. Go. Please go to blacktnews.com. Check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate because it does cost a stream on my website, all the good stuff. Check out different merch on the website, and we'll talk about the press conference tomorrow. So God bless you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.